My name is Claire Bennett. I was 40 years old, a widowed mother, and the controlling owner of the company my family still liked to call theirs. At 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, I stood in my kitchen with one hand around a cooling cup of coffee while my mother pounded on my front door hard enough to shake the framed photographs in the hall. My phone was vibrating across the counter. Ryan had called 6 times. My father had left 2 messages. A family group chat I had muted overnight showed 37 unread notifications. Behind me, my 13-year-old daughter, Ava, stood barefoot in her pajamas, watching the door as if she expected it to come off its hinges. Less than 16 hours earlier, my brother had looked directly at me and smirked. "I canceled your daughter's $7,400 surgery payment," he had said. "My son only turns 18 once." My father had agreed with him. My mother had asked me not to make a scene. I had said nothing. I had simply taken out my phone and called my accountant. Now Mom was outside shouting my name, and the relatives who had spent years treating my money like a family utility had discovered that something had changed before breakfast. What they did not yet understand was that the canceled surgery payment was only the first transaction my accountant had found. Before I explain how we reached that door, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video if you believe family loyalty should never require sacrificing the person who trusts you most. Then let me take you back to Friday morning, when I still believed Ava's surgery was the one thing my family would never touch. At 7:12 that morning, Ava sat at our kitchen table pointing a little gray field recorder toward the window. She had received it from me the previous Christmas and carried it almost everywhere. While other children collected photographs, Ava collected sounds: rain in the gutters, basketballs striking pavement, the squeak of our back gate, sparrows arguing in the maple tree. She wore one earbud in her right ear. The left one rested beside her cereal bowl. "What are you recording?" I asked as I packed the paperwork for her preoperative appointment. "The kettle and that truck backing up," she said. "The beeps are exactly a fourth apart." I paused beside her. "Can you hear both without the recorder?" She gave me the small shrug she used whenever the honest answer might worry me. Mostly. Mostly had become one of the most frightening words in our house. 6 months earlier, Ava had started complaining that her left ear felt full. 2 rounds of antibiotics stopped the infections but never restored the hearing. Then came the dizziness, the scan, and the diagnosis: a cholesteatoma growing behind her eardrum. Her surgeon had explained that it was not cancer and not an emergency in the way a ruptured appendix was an emergency. It was also not harmless. Left alone, it could continue damaging the tiny bones responsible for carrying sound. The operation would remove the disease, repair the eardrum, and reconstruct whatever could safely be reconstructed. Nobody promised perfect hearing. They promised a better chance if we did not surrender the date we had waited months to receive. My insurance covered most of it. The remaining deductible, coinsurance, and facility deposit totaled exactly $7,400. Naomi Chen, the controller for Bennett Commercial Millwork, had prepared the money as a documented owner distribution from my share of the company. The surgical center required confirmation before the weekend. The transfer was scheduled for that afternoon. At 7:23, Naomi's name appeared on my screen with a green check beside it. Owner distribution approved, a CH released, expect confirmation by 2 p.m. I turned the screen so Ava could see the check, although I did not show her the amount. "All handled," I said. She looked at the folder under my arm. "Was it a lot?" "It was what it cost." "That's not what I asked." I smiled because she sounded so much like Daniel that, for half a second, grief caught me under the ribs. My husband had been dead 6 years, but sometimes Ava tilted her head or narrowed her eyes and time folded in on itself. "You don't have to carry the price of being healthy," I told her. "That's my job." She lowered her gaze to the recorder. "You already carry everybody else's prices." I pretended not to hear the warning inside that sentence. Bennett commercial millwork had begun as 3 woodworking machines in my father's detached garage. He liked to tell people he had founded an empire. The truth was less dramatic and more complicated. Dad had built cabinets between factory shifts. I had built the customer list, borrowed against my house, leased our first real workshop, hired employees, and spent 15 years turning irregular jobs into a regional company supplying clinics, schools, restaurants, and offices. I owned 82%. Dad owned 10%. Ryan owned 8% because I had given him equity when I hired him after one of his job losses. The ownership documents were clear. Family memory was not. To my parents, the Bennett name on the building meant the company belonged to all of us. To Ryan, being Dad's only son meant he was its natural heir. To me, letting them keep that belief had once seemed easier than correcting them every time it surfaced. After Daniel died, my family had genuinely helped us. Mom picked Ava up from school, Dad fixed the porch and sat with me through nights when sleep would not come. Ryan handled deliveries, groceries, and bank errands while I moved through grief like someone walking underwater. I never forgot that kindness. The mistake I made was allowing gratitude to become a debt with no final payment. By 8:30, Ava and I were at the Pediatric Medical Center. Her surgeon reviewed the procedure again, answered Ava's questions, and reminded us that the hearing test after recovery would matter more than how anything sounded immediately afterward. Ava nodded with fierce concentration and wrote everything in a small notebook. When the nurse asked whether our financial arrangements were complete, I said yes without hesitation. At 4:17 that afternoon, while I was reviewing a materials invoice in my office, the surgical center called, "Ms. Bennett, we haven't received the required payment confirmation," the billing coordinator said. "The transaction was marked canceled by the originating account." I looked at the clock. "That's impossible. I have the release notice." We received the advance notice, but the transfer itself was withdrawn. The words did not make sense together. Withdrawn by whom? I can't see the individual user. I can only see the cancellation code. Without a replacement arrangement by 10 Monday morning, we have to release Wednesday's surgical slot. Releasing the slot would not mean Ava could never receive treatment. It meant putting her back into a crowded scheduling queue, repeating portions of her preoperative clearance if the authorization expired, and waiting while damage her surgeon might not be able to reverse continued behind her eardrum. That distinction was precisely what people used when they wanted to make delay sound harmless. They heard that she would not die on Wednesday and stopped listening before anyone explained what she might lose. I opened the business banking portal before she finished speaking. Naomi's approved transfer was there, but the green status bar had turned red. Canceled at 1:43 p.m. by Secondary Administrator R. Bennett. For several seconds, all I could hear was the faint mechanical hum of the ventilation system above my desk. Ryan was our operations director. His access allowed him to release vendor payments, purchase materials, and solve genuine emergencies when I was unavailable. It did not authorize him to cancel an owner distribution. It certainly did not authorize him to decide whether my daughter received surgery. I thanked the coordinator, wrote down the Monday deadline, and promised to call back. My voice remained steady until the line disconnected. Then I noticed another transaction directly beneath the canceled payment. At 1:51, 8 minutes after Ryan stopped Ava's transfer, $7,400 had been sent to Foundry Hall, the event venue hosting Ethan's 18th birthday celebration the following night. The amount was not similar, it was identical. The operating account could support that distribution because Naomi and I had planned for it. It could not support relatives treating the remaining balance as unclaimed money. Payroll would clear the following week. 2 major clients had not yet paid their invoices, and our lumber supplier was already asking whether its latest check had been released. Ryan understood those pressures better than almost anyone. He had not made an innocent transfer from a bottomless account. He had placed his celebration ahead of Ava and then left me responsible for protecting the company from his choice. My hands began to shake. I pressed them flat against the desk until they stopped. Anger at work had always made me quieter, not louder. Employees sometimes mistook that quiet for calm. My family usually mistook it for surrender. That difference would matter before the weekend ended. I called Ryan. He declined the first call and answered the second with music and voices behind him. "If this is about tomorrow, Mom already ordered enough food," he said. "Where are you?" There was a pause. "At Mom and Dad's. We're finishing the decorations." "Stay there." I collected Ava from the school library, where she had been waiting for me after an audio club meeting. I did not tell her what had happened. I said we needed to stop at Grandma's house, and she studied my face without asking why. Dad's driveway was crowded with rental vans. Through the front windows, I could see gold balloons, black tablecloths, and stacked boxes printed with the Foundry Hall logo. The party itself would take place at the venue, but Mom had turned her dining room into a staging area for centerpieces and gift bags. "Should I come in?" Ava asked. I wanted to leave her in the car. I also knew she would be safer inside than alone in a darkening driveway surrounded by delivery vehicles. "Sit in the den. Put your headphones on if it gets loud." She touched her left ear. Headphone. I regretted the plural immediately. "Right. Stay where I can find you." Ryan stood in the kitchen with a roll of gold ribbon in one hand and a drink in the other. At 43, he still knew how to occupy a room before anyone else had decided whether he belonged at its center. Dad sat at the table inspecting a printed guest list. Mom was tying cards to small boxes of imported chocolates. Nobody looked surprised to see me. I placed my phone on the table with the 2 transactions visible. "Why did you cancel my distribution?" Ryan glanced at the screen. "Because we needed the balance available. For Foundry Hall. The final payment was due today. So was Ava's surgery deposit." Mom stopped working with the ribbon. Dad did not look up from the guest list. Ryan took a slow sip. Then he smiled in a way that told me he had rehearsed the argument and expected to enjoy winning it. "I canceled your daughter's $7,400 surgery payment," he said. "My son only turns 18 once." The room became unnaturally still. "You knew what the transfer was for?" "Of course I knew. It was listed in the memo." He set down his glass. "Claire, she can wait a few weeks. The doctor said it wasn't an emergency. We can't move an 18th birthday. People are already coming. Deposits have been paid." Her surgeon said delay could cause more damage. "Could," Ryan repeated. "Not would." I looked at Dad. "Did you know?" He finally folded the guest list. "Ryan called me. I agreed the party had to be protected. The medical center can give you a payment plan. That transfer was my owner distribution. It came from the family company. It came from my 82% of the family company." His mouth tightened. "That company started in my garage." There it was, the sentence that had excused every boundary they had crossed for 15 years. Mom stood and moved between us as though physical placement could turn theft into misunderstanding. "Nobody is saying Ava doesn't matter. Ryan panicked because the venue was going to cancel. You always find a way through these things. You expected me to find another $7,400 by Monday. And you will," Ryan said. "You have Naomi. You have credit. You're not helpless." His confidence hurt more than the smirk. He was not gambling with Ava's surgery because he believed she deserved to lose it. He was gambling because years of experience had taught him that I would quietly prevent the loss. In his mind, my competence had erased his cruelty before he committed it. A soft movement came from the hallway. Ava stood just beyond the kitchen doorway. Her headphones hung around her neck. She was looking at the red word "canceled" on my phone. "Mom?" she said. Ryan's expression shifted, but only for a moment. "This is adult financial stuff, Ava." She looked at him, then at the balloons filling Grandma's dining room. "Is my surgery canceled?" I picked up my phone. Every argument I could have made was already standing in that kitchen wearing my daughter's frightened face. If they needed me to explain why her hearing mattered more than gold balloons, no sentence I produced was going to repair them. I said nothing to Ryan, nothing to Dad, nothing to Mom. I took Ava's hand and walked out. Ryan followed us onto the porch. "Don't turn this into some corporate drama, Claire. The money's spent." I closed the car door between his voice and my daughter. Naomi answered on the second ring while I sat behind the steering wheel. The dashboard clock read 5:26. Claire, I was about to call you. Your distribution disappeared from the queue. Ryan canceled it. Silence, then the crisp sound of a keyboard. His profile shouldn't have been able to alter that batch, but it did. I'm opening the bank log now. Where did the funds go? Foundry Hall, Ethan's party. Naomi exhaled slowly. She had warned me for 3 years that family cards, vendor access, and personal support needed separate walls. I had answered every warning with a new exception. Tell me what we can do legally tonight, I said. I can preserve the logs immediately. I can suspend delegated banking and purchasing privileges under the authorization you signed last year. I can attempt to stop or recall any unsettled vendor transactions. Your parents' discretionary cards can be paused pending review, but earned pay and ownership rights cannot be touched. The medical payment needs a clean replacement source. Use the protected capital reserve for a properly documented distribution from my share. Send the confirmation directly to the surgical center. That reserve is there for operational emergencies. I watched Ava through the rearview mirror. She had placed the recorder on her lap but had not switched it on. This became an operational emergency when an operations director used company access to cancel it. Naomi was quiet for a beat. Do you want only Ryan's access suspended? I thought of Dad approving money he did not control. I thought of Mom telling me I would find a way, as if my life were an emergency exit they could keep blocking, because I knew how to clear it. Secure every account, I said. Pause every discretionary family card and every unapproved payment. Preserve everything. Then begin a complete related party review from the last 3 years. That review may find things you can't put back inside the family. Only do what the documents authorize. Don't punish anyone. Don't hide anything either. Understood. Some changes will take effect tonight. The remaining bank and vendor controls will process when systems open in the morning. What time? By 8. I ended the call and sat without moving. Is the surgery gone? Ava asked from the back seat. I turned toward her. No one in that house gets to make that decision. That's not a yes. Naomi is moving the payment. I will call the center the moment they open. You are having the operation. She nodded, but did not look relieved. Is Ethan's birthday ruined because of me? Nothing Ryan chose is because of you. He said she can wait. The sentence landed softly, which made it worse. She had heard enough. You shouldn't have had to hear that. That doesn't make it untrue. I wanted to tell her Ryan had spoken from panic, that Dad was trapped in old ideas, that Grandma loved her. Those explanations had once helped me keep every relationship intact. That evening, they sounded like different ways of asking Ava to distrust what she had witnessed. It isn't true, I said. You are not waiting because they decided someone else's celebration matters more. We drove home beneath a sky the color of wet concrete. My phone kept lighting up in the cup holder. Ryan accused me of embarrassing him in front of Ava. Dad ordered me to call before I did something reckless. Mom sent 3 versions of the same request. Calm down, sleep on it, remember everything the family had done for me. I answered none of them. At home, I heated soup neither Ava nor I finished. She took the field recorder to the back window but left it dark beside her elbow. When I asked about the pain in her ear, she said it was manageable. When I asked about the dizziness, she admitted it had happened twice at school that week. Why didn't you tell me? You were already worried. There it was again, the inheritance I had never meant to give her, the belief that love meant making your own needs smaller. I sat beside her. My worry is not a bill you have to reduce. She leaned against me, carefully keeping her left ear untouched. For several minutes, we watched the bare branches move beyond the glass. At 11:14, Naomi sent a brief message. Logs preserved, initial suspensions confirmed, additional controls queued for 7:45 a.m. Do not respond to financial requests until we speak. I read it twice and locked my phone. Sleep came in fragments. Each time I woke, I remembered a different year in which I had chosen convenience over boundaries, the fuel card Dad used for a vacation, the supplier account Ryan borrowed for repairs on his own house, the monthly supplement Mom had begun calling her allowance. None of those favors had seemed large enough to justify a war. Together, they had taught my family that my permission was a formality. At 7:46 Saturday morning, the first alert appeared. Delegated administrator access suspended. At 7:51, another followed. 3 card transactions declined pending authorization review. At 7:54, Ryan called. I let it ring. At 7:56, Dad called. I let that ring too. At 7:58, Mom sent 4 words: "We need to talk." Ava entered the kitchen as I set my phone face down. Before I could answer her questioning look, tires scraped hard against the curb outside. A car door slammed. Fast footsteps crossed my porch. Then my mother began pounding on the front door. I moved Ava away from the hall before I approached the door. Mom struck it again with the side of her fist. "Claire, open this door right now." I turned the deadbolt but left the chain engaged. When I opened the door 3 inches, cold air entered first. Mom stood on the porch without makeup, her coat fastened over the same blouse she had worn while tying party favors the night before. Her car sat crooked against the curb with the driver's door still open. "Take off the chain," she said. "Stop pounding." "I wouldn't have to pound if you answered your phone." She pushed the door, and the chain snapped taut. "What did you do?" I looked past her at the empty street. "Why are you here?" "My card was declined at the bakery. Your father's fuel card stopped working. Foundry Hall called Ryan and said the payment is under review. They won't open the ballroom unless somebody guarantees the balance by noon." Not one word about Ava. "Did you come to ask whether your granddaughter still has a surgery date?" Mom blinked. "Of course I care about that. But you said Naomi was moving the money. The immediate emergency is the party." Behind me, the kitchen floor creaked. Ava had come closer. "The immediate emergency," I said, "is that an employee used company access to cancel an owner distribution and spend it on a private event. Ryan is not just an employee. He is your brother. That did not authorize him. Your father authorized it. Dad cannot authorize spending from my ownership share." Mom lowered her voice, the way she did when she wanted a demand to sound like concern. "Claire, there will be 100 people at that venue tonight. Ethan's friends, family, Ryan's clients. Think about what canceling will do to him." Ryan thought about that before he used Ava's money. "It isn't Ava's money. You already found replacement funds." The ease with which she said it showed me the entire structure. If I prevented the injury, they believed the injury ceased to matter. Repair had become permission. "The cards stay paused," I said. "The review continues. Ryan's access stays suspended." Mom stared through the narrow opening. "You are prepared to humiliate this whole family over one transfer." "No, Ryan was prepared to endanger Ava's treatment over a party." "I am prepared to learn what else he did with access I gave him." "Your father will not accept this." "He doesn't have to accept it." Her face changed then. Not because I had raised my voice, I had not, but because I had stopped behaving as though Dad's displeasure were the final consequence in every disagreement. "After everything we did when Daniel died," she whispered, "the old debt arrived exactly when I expected it. I remember what you did. I loved you for it. I have thanked you, supported you, and helped you for 6 years. None of that purchased the right to decide what happens to my daughter now." Mom's eyes filled, but her anger remained intact. "You're destroying us." "I am not discussing this on my porch." "Then let me inside." I looked back at Ava. She was hugging her arms across her chest. "Not while you are shouting." I closed the door gently. Mom struck it once more, then stopped. For nearly a minute, she remained on the porch. I could hear her breathing through the wood. Eventually, her footsteps retreated and her car pulled away. Ava looked at me. She never asked. I did not insult her by pretending otherwise. No, she didn't. She sat at the table and pulled her pajama sleeves over her hands. Is Grandma coming back? Not unless I invite her. She has a key. I had forgotten the brass spare key I gave Mom after Daniel died, when unexpected help had felt like the only thing keeping our house upright. For 6 years, she had used it to deliver groceries, wait for repair workers, and enter whenever she believed I needed her. The key had once represented safety. That morning, Ava saw it as a way someone could cross a boundary I had only spoken aloud. She will return it, I said. Until then, the deadbolt she cannot open stays locked. I checked every window and the back door without pretending the ritual was unnecessary. When I returned, Ava had moved her field recorder from the window ledge to the table between us. It remained switched off. My phone rang at 8:12. Naomi's name appeared, and I put the call on speaker only after asking Ava whether she wanted to hear it. The replacement distribution is in the medical center's receiving account, Naomi said. I have a confirmation number, but their billing office must attach it to Ava's file. They open at 9. Ava sat down at the table. What happened to Foundry Hall? I asked. The final transfer had not fully settled. The bank placed it under recall. The venue froze the reservation when it learned the payment authority was disputed. Earlier deposits may be non-refundable. We will not know until their contract is reviewed. And the cards? All discretionary family cards are paused. Payroll and legitimate ownership distributions remain untouched. Ryan attempted to sign in 11 times after his access was suspended. He also tried to authorize 2 vendor payments from a purchasing profile, so I disabled that profile and preserved the attempts. Naomi's voice tightened. Claire, I sampled the related party ledger while the controls processed. There are personal fuel charges, residential materials classified as client supplies, and a vehicle payment assigned to operations. I cannot tell you the scope yet. Are Mom and Dad's ordinary bank accounts affected? No. Their pensions, personal checking, insurance, and lawful distributions are separate. I paused only company-funded cards and voluntary benefits under your management authority. I also protected payroll, tax reserves, and current vendor obligations from any new administrator changes. That distinction mattered. Anger could have made every loss feel deserved, but deserved was not the same as authorized. If I copied Ryan's belief that emotional certainty created financial permission, I would only rebuild the same system with myself at its center. Can Ryan reach employee information? His credentials are disabled. I archived access logs and instructed the service provider not to reset them without your written approval. We still need to collect physical keys and confirm whether he stored documents elsewhere. Then that comes next. The kitchen seemed to narrow around me. Start the complete review. I have. You should also notify company counsel. This is no longer a disagreement about one transaction. After the call, I contacted the surgical center. The coordinator verified the confirmation number and promised to hold Wednesday's slot while the payment posted. It was not final, but it was the first clean breath I had taken since Friday afternoon. At 9:20, Luis Ortega called from the millwork shop. Ryan and your father are here, he said. Machinery rumbled behind him. Ryan told the Saturday crew the bank froze payroll and the company may close. I checked the payroll portal. Everything looks funded, but people are worried. Payroll is protected. Do not let Ryan authorize purchases or remove records. He has keys. Of course he did. Financial access had ended faster than physical access. I asked Ava whether she felt safe staying home. She looked toward the front door and shook her head. I took her with me, seated her in my locked office within sight of the administrative floor, and gave her the option to call me at any moment. Naomi met us there with her laptop and a folder of authorization documents. Ryan was standing beside the production schedule when I entered the main office. Dad occupied a visitor's chair like a judge waiting to issue sentence. Luis remained near the doorway. 3 employees pretended to organize delivery paperwork while listening to everything. Ryan pointed at me. Tell them payroll is safe. Payroll is safe. The employees relaxed. Ryan did not. Then tell them why you locked the operations director out of the bank on a delivery weekend. Because the operations director canceled an authorized owner distribution and redirected company funds to a private party. Dad stood. This does not belong in front of employees. Ryan brought it in front of employees when he told them the company might close. Ryan spread his hands. I was trying to explain why I couldn't release the supplier payment. Naomi looked at her screen. The supplier payment was released yesterday morning. It is scheduled to settle Monday. His eyes flickered toward her. Then why did the purchasing profile reject me? Because Claire suspended your access pending review. She cannot suspend an owner. She suspended an administrator and employee, Naomi said. Your economic ownership has not been altered. Dad stepped between them. I gave permission for that party expense. Naomi opened the operating agreement. Your 10% interest does not grant authority over Claire's distributions or management decisions. I started this company, and the documents specify what you own. Dad looked at me as though Naomi's accuracy were an insult I had arranged. Ryan removed his company keys from his pocket but held them in his fist. You need me today. The county clinic installation leaves at 11 and half the hardware is backordered. Luis cleared his throat. The hardware arrived Thursday. It's on pallet 14. Not the corrected hinges. Those are on 14 too. Ryan turned toward him. You think you can run this floor because you found one box? No, Luis said. I think the delivery can leave because the paperwork is complete. The moment was satisfying only from a distance. In reality, Ryan knew our operations. He had relationships with installers, remembered the temperaments of aging machines, and could look at a stack of parts and know which project was late. Removing him created risk. That did not mean the company had to accept any risk he chose to create. You are suspended from employment pending investigation, I said. Leave the keys with Naomi. Do not contact employees about company business. You would cripple the business to prove a point? The point is that access has conditions. For a second, I thought he might throw the keys. Instead, he placed them on the schedule board one at a time. Dad followed him toward the door. Before leaving, he turned to me. When this falls apart, remember that you chose strangers over blood. Luis waited until the door closed. Do you still want the clinic truck out by 11? Yes. That answer began 6 hours of work. Ryan had not lied about every difficulty. One installer was unavailable, the route notes were incomplete, and a supplier had attached the wrong purchase order number to a shipment. Luis and I solved what we could. The clinic delivery left 40 minutes late. Nobody cheered. The company survived Saturday through ordinary competence and a great deal of inconvenience. Before the afternoon crew left, I gathered them beside the production board. I told them Ryan was suspended pending a documented financial review. Payroll was secure, and no employee was expected to choose a side in a family conflict. I asked them to direct operational questions to Luis or me and to preserve, rather than speculate about, any records they encountered. One employee asked whether jobs were at risk. I told him the truth. Disruption created risk, but current contracts and payroll were funded. Another admitted Ryan had sometimes instructed him to change project codes after personal materials were loaded for delivery. Naomi recorded the statement without turning the gathering into an interrogation. Afterward, Luis showed me 3 routines that existed only in Ryan's memory: a Monday supplier call, an informal installer rotation, and a list of clients who required confirmation before a truck departed. None excused what Ryan had done. Each reminded me that accountable removal required replacing useful work with durable systems. Justice without operational preparation would make employees finance my family's damage through lost stability. At 2:30, Foundry Hall formally canceled the party. The venue agreed to return the unsettled final payment, but retained an earlier deposit until the contract dispute could be resolved. The bakery, DJ, and rental company refused additional work without personal payment from Ryan. Naomi recorded every response. At 3:10, Ethan appeared outside my office holding a long black box. He looked painfully young for someone whose adulthood had caused so much noise. "Can I talk to you?" I let him in. Ava came from the smaller conference room when she heard his voice. Ethan placed the box on my desk. Inside was a silver watch, heavy and bright, still wrapped around its display cushion. "Dad gave it to me at breakfast," he said. "He said the party was canceled because you decided my birthday didn't matter." Ava looked down. "Your birthday matters," I said. "That party was paid for with a transaction taken from Ava's surgery distribution." "I know now." He swallowed. "Mom showed me the venue message and Dad started yelling about the bank. I asked what he meant. He unlocked his phone and gave it to me. The messages began 3 weeks earlier. Ethan had told Ryan he wanted dinner with 3 friends and help buying a used guitar. Ryan had responded with plans for Foundry Hall, a DJ, rented lighting, and a guest list filled with business contacts Ethan barely knew. One message from Ethan asked who was paying. Ryan's answer read, "Grandpa says the company will cover it. Your aunt can afford one night that isn't about her." Later, Ryan had sent a photograph of Frank's handwritten approval on a vendor sheet, although Frank had no authority to provide it. "I thought it was a company party or something," Ethan said. "I didn't know he moved your payment." "I believe you." He pushed the watch toward me. "This came from the company card, too. The receipt was in the bag. I don't want it. We will document it and return it if the vendor accepts it." "I'm sorry, Ava." She lifted her eyes. "You didn't cancel it. It was for me. My surgery is for me. That doesn't mean I chose any of this either." They stood on opposite sides of my desk, both carrying shame manufactured by adults. I understood then how easily Ryan's decision could have damaged them long after every account was corrected. "What are you doing tonight?" I asked Ethan. "Dinner with Mom and the friends I invited before Dad turned it into a convention. We're getting burgers." He attempted a smile. "I still turn 18 even without uplighting." I wished him a happy birthday. I did not offer to pay for dinner, replace the party, or buy the guitar. Money had already occupied too much space between us. Ethan hugged Ava carefully and left the watch with Naomi. As he reached the door, he stopped. "Dad is going to say you made me choose. You are not required to defend me to him. What if he asks whether I think he's a bad father?" I remembered Ryan teaching Ethan to ride a bicycle in our old driveway and spending an entire rainy Saturday helping him build a model bridge. Love and harm could exist in the same person. Pretending otherwise made accountability fragile because one good memory could erase a pattern. "Tell him what you know about the decision," I said. "You do not have to issue a verdict on his whole life." Ethan nodded. Ava walked him to the lobby. Watching them, I understood that protecting their relationship meant refusing to recruit either of them into the adult coalition forming around us. That evening, the photographs his mother posted showed 4 teenagers crowded around a diner table with a grocery store cake. Ethan looked embarrassed, amused, and real. Ryan appeared in none of them. On Sunday morning, Naomi came to my house with preliminary review files. Ava sat near the window, editing an old recording with one earbud, while Naomi spread statements across the dining table. The pattern was not clever. It had survived because nobody expected me to look closely. Building supplies delivered to Ryan's address were classified under clinic projects. Fuel purchases appeared on weekends when every company vehicle was parked. Payments on Ryan's personal truck were labeled equipment transport. The watch had been coded as an employee service award. There were meals, hotel charges, home repairs, and vendor reimbursements unsupported by legitimate receipts. Dad had approved some expenses in emails, despite lacking authority. Mom's card showed groceries, travel, and household purchases far beyond the emergencies for which I had provided it. Her spending was not concealed the way Ryan's was, but it demonstrated how completely a favor had become expected income. The total was already far beyond the party transfer, and Naomi had not finished the first year. We reviewed authorization emails one by one. Some contained direct lies. In others, Ryan relied on implication. He described a personal purchase as something Dad wanted or a family necessity, as though those phrases automatically converted it into a business obligation. More than once, he copied me into the middle of a long thread after the money had moved, knowing I often scanned for operational problems, and accepted his assurance that Naomi had approved the coding. The review also documented my part without equating it with his. I had received exception reports and failed to demand receipts. I had authorized Mom's emergency card without a written sealing. I had allowed Dad to keep an advisory title after retirement without defining where advice ended. Ryan had exploited access. I had left the access vague because clarity felt unkind. Naomi separated those failures carefully. "Weak controls explain opportunity," she said. "They do not erase the decisions of the person who used it." That sentence gave me a way to accept responsibility without accepting blame for Ryan's conduct. "How did I miss this?" I asked. "You did not review related party expenses with the same skepticism you applied elsewhere," she said. Ryan also controlled the first level of coding. I raised exceptions. You accepted his explanations. She did not soften the truth, and I was grateful. I thought formal controls would tell them I didn't trust them. Controls tell trustworthy people what trust permits. My phone displayed messages from Mom while we spoke. Dad's prescriptions were not affected. Their pension deposits were intact. Their lawful ownership distributions remained scheduled. Still, Mom described the loss of discretionary cards as abandonment. I had spent years confusing the prevention of discomfort with the prevention of harm. My parents were not without food, housing, income, or medical care. They were facing the cost of choices they had previously sent to me. When Naomi left, I found Ava in her bedroom with the recorder turned off beside her. "Does your ear hurt?" I asked. "A little." "A little like yesterday? Or a little the way mostly means you don't want me worried?" She stared at her blanket. "The second one." I sat beside her. "Tell me the truth, even when it adds work to my day." It was bad Thursday night, and I got dizzy twice Friday, not just during school. I held the wall in the bathroom because the floor moved. Fear rose in me, followed immediately by guilt. "Why did you hide that?" "Because everybody already acts like you do too much for me." "Who is everybody?" "Grandpa makes jokes about how you organize your life around me. Uncle Ryan says you stopped being fun after Dad died. Grandma always tells me not to give you one more thing to worry about." Each sentence revealed a conversation I had dismissed as harmless because it was not openly cruel. "And Friday," she continued, "I heard them before I came into the kitchen. Uncle Ryan said you would pay twice if you had to because you always panic about me." Grandpa laughed. I closed my eyes. "If you lose them because of the surgery," she said, "then every time you look at me, you're going to remember what it cost." "Ava, look at me." She did. "I'm not setting these boundaries because you are sick. I'm setting them because I should have set them years ago. Ryan made his decision. Dad made his. Grandma made hers. You did not create their choices, and I will never put their cost on you. But if I didn't need the operation, then Ryan would have taken money from something else, and I might have excused him again. Your surgery exposed the system. It did not cause it." She wiped her cheek with the heel of her hand. "When you said nothing in Grandma's kitchen, I thought you were going to fix it and pretend it didn't happen. That is what I usually do. It doesn't protect me if everybody gets to do it again." There was no accusation in her voice, which made the truth easier to hear and harder to escape. "You're right," I said. "I was protecting the appearance of a family. I need to protect the people inside it." She leaned against my shoulder. After a while, she reached for the recorder and switched it on. The small red light glowed between us, capturing our breathing and the rain beginning against her window. I called the surgeon's weekend line and reported the additional dizziness and pain. The nurse asked about fever, drainage, vomiting, facial weakness, and whether Ava could walk without support. None of the emergency warnings were present. We received instructions to monitor her, keep the ear dry, and go to the hospital if anything changed. After the call, Ava said, "I thought you would be mad that I didn't tell you. I am scared that you felt you couldn't." Is that different? It has to be. If my fear becomes punishment, you will hide the next thing too. We wrote the warning signs on the refrigerator. It was a small act, but it replaced our private guessing with something we could face together. Monday at 9/6, the surgical center confirmed that the replacement payment had posted and Wednesday's slot was secure. I asked the coordinator to repeat it while Ava listened. "You are confirmed," the woman said. "Arrive at 6:15 Wednesday morning. Nothing to eat after midnight Tuesday." Ava wrote the instructions, even though she already had them. "Thank you," she said, then muted the call and looked at me. "Now I'm scared about the actual surgery." The honesty felt like progress. Good. That is the part we are allowed to be scared about. The next 2 days forced me to hold separate realities at once. At work, Naomi and counsel preserved records, documented Ryan's suspension, and reviewed the operating agreement. Luis coordinated production while I corrected missed schedules and reassured vendors without sharing private allegations. At home, Ava packed loose shirts, charged her recorder, and asked whether waking from anesthesia felt like falling upward. Ryan sent messages accusing me of turning Ethan against him. Dad threatened to call a vote, although the operating agreement gave him no power to reverse my management decision. Mom left a container of soup on our porch with a note asking me to end the investigation before the family became impossible to repair. I brought the soup inside because wasting food would not make me principled. I did not end the investigation. I also stopped reading every message the moment it arrived. Naomi created a folder for financial communications. Counsel received anything involving threats, records, or company demands. Personal accusations stayed muted until I had the capacity to read them. That was another boundary I had never considered. Urgency could be manufactured by sending the same demand through enough channels. At night, Ava and I listened to her preoperative recordings. She identified sounds with her right ear and guessed when the left side failed her. We did not turn the exercise into inspiration. Sometimes she was frightened and irritable. Sometimes I was too tired to say the right thing. Safety began to feel less like perfect calm and more like permission to tell the truth without managing the other person's reaction. At 6:12 Wednesday morning, Ava and I entered the medical center beneath fluorescent lights. She carried the field recorder in her coat pocket until a nurse gave me a bag for her belongings. "Keep it on," she said as I took it. "During the operation?" "Not in the operating room, just while you wait. Then I can hear what I missed." I switched it on after they wheeled her away. It recorded the hiss of the coffee machine, shoes crossing polished floors, pages turning in a magazine I never read, and my own uneven breathing. The surgeon came out 3 hours later. The cholesteatoma was removed. 2 small hearing bones had been damaged. 1 was reconstructed. The eardrum repair looked stable. Final hearing improvement could not be assessed until swelling subsided and the packing was removed. "The important thing today," the surgeon said, "is that the disease is out." Relief did not arrive as celebration. It arrived as weakness in my knees. I sat before I fell. When Ava woke, her left ear was bandaged and everything sounded wrong to her. She was nauseated, thirsty, and angry that the blood pressure cuff kept tightening. I held the straw while she drank and did not tell her she was brave. She did not need another performance expected from her. Ethan sent a photograph of a ridiculous cardboard sign he had made that read, "Welcome back to the world of annoying sounds." Ava smiled, then winced because smiling pulled at the bandage. Mom texted that she loved Ava. Dad sent nothing. Ryan asked whether I was satisfied now that the surgery had happened. I turned the phone off. Recovery was slower than the word successful suggests. Ava slept sitting partially upright. Food tasted strange. Her ear remained packed, so her hearing initially seemed worse. For several days, sudden dizziness made her grip my arm. We returned twice for follow-up examinations before the surgeon said healing was proceeding normally. The medical crisis had been protected. The family crisis remained. 10 days after the operation, Naomi and I reviewed the completed accounting summary with company counsel. The records distinguished mistakes from patterns and benefits from concealment. Ryan's repeated miscoding, unauthorized transfers, personal vehicle costs, and false vendor descriptions formed the largest category. Frank's written approvals established knowledge, but not authority. My parents' discretionary spending violated the limits I had failed to enforce, although it lacked Ryan's deliberate concealment. Counsel explained the next steps without promising a theatrical punishment. Ryan could be terminated for cause. His banking and purchasing authority could be permanently revoked. His 8% interest could be offered for redemption under the operating agreement using an independent valuation. Documented obligations could be offset only where the agreement and law permitted. Any remainder would require a formal restitution arrangement. Tax corrections and legally required reporting would proceed regardless of what the family preferred. Frank could be removed from his advisory role and all operational access, but his 10% ownership remained his. My parents' voluntary supplements, cards, vehicle, and informal benefits could end. Their pensions, personal accounts, essential medical care, and lawful distributions were not mine to weaponize. The facts gave me authority. They did not make using it painless. We scheduled a formal meeting in the company conference room after Ava was stable enough for me to leave her for 2 hours. Ethan was not invited. I refused to make him evidence in a battle between adults. The night before the meeting, I considered offering Ryan a quiet resignation, restoring my parents' supplement, and narrowing the review to the $7,400. The compromise would have been cheaper, faster, and familiar. It would also have taught everyone that enough pressure could reduce a documented pattern to one reimbursed mistake. Ava found me rereading the proposed resolutions at the kitchen table. "Are you going to let them come back?" she asked. "Not to their old roles." "You look like you want to." "I want this to stop hurting." She considered that. Grandma always says giving in stops the fight. "It only stops the loud part." I placed the resolutions in my briefcase. Ava was not making the decision for me. She was describing the life my earlier decisions had created. The next morning, I entered the conference room prepared to let the loud part continue if that was the cost of ending the pattern. Ryan arrived with his own attorney's contact information written on a pad. Dad wore the suit he reserved for funerals and bank meetings. Mom sat between them, clutching her purse in both hands. Naomi placed the review summary, operating agreement, access logs, and returned watch on the table. Ryan stared at the watch. "You made my son give that back. Ethan chose to return it after he saw the receipt, because you told him I stole surgery money." The bank log told him where the money went. Dad tapped the folder without opening it. "This should never have left the family." "It did not leave the family," I said. "It entered the company records because family members used company accounts." Mom looked at Naomi. "Do you have to sit here for this?" "Yes," I said. "She is the controller presenting verified findings." Ryan pushed his chair back. "Verified according to people you pay." Naomi slid copies of vendor statements across the table. The bank, vendors, delivery addresses, and card issuers created these records. You may dispute any item through counsel. He did not touch them. I explained the conclusions slowly. His employment was terminated effective immediately. His access was permanently revoked. An independent valuation would begin the redemption process for his ownership. The company would seek restitution for documented misuse, apply offsets only where lawful, correct tax records, and make any required reports. Ryan's face reddened. "You cannot take my shares." "I am not taking them. The operating agreement provides a redemption process following misconduct. You will have independent advice and the right to challenge the valuation." "You gave me those shares." "I gave you ownership. I did not give you permission to take whatever else you wanted." Dad opened the folder at last. then closed it after the first page. And what have you decided to do to us? Your advisory role ends today. Company cards, the vehicle, vendor authority, and building access end. Your lawful ownership interest remains. The monthly discretionary supplement and informal household payments stop at the end of this month. Mom inhaled sharply. How are we supposed to live? On your pensions, savings, and lawful distributions, Naomi prepared a list of every personal account and benefit that remains yours. Your prescriptions and insurance are not being touched. So we have to ask permission if we need help? You have to ask. That is different from taking. Ryan laughed once without humor. Listen to her. She thinks a spreadsheet raised her when Daniel died. The cruelty struck where he intended. I let it hurt before I answered. You helped me after Daniel died. Mom helped. Dad helped. I will always be grateful. I also repaid the loans, gave you a job, gave you ownership, supported our parents, and trusted you with my company. Gratitude is not a lifetime authorization code. It was one party. Naomi opened the summary to the pages of personal expenses. Ryan looked away. Dad's voice hardened. The boy turned 18 once. Claire, she could have waited. There was the governing belief, intact even after the operation, the records, and the damage. Ava heard you say that, I told him. She hid dizziness because this family taught her that needing me was selfish. Mom covered her mouth. Don't use the child to win, Dad said. I am not using her. I am telling you the consequence of what you approved. Ryan pointed toward the returned watch. Ethan will come around when he realizes you manipulated him. His relationship with you is not mine to manage. That is the old system, Ryan, deciding other people's feelings for them and spending other people's money to control the result. Mom began to cry quietly. Can't we settle this privately? Ryan can repay the $7,400. Your father can apologize. We can have Sunday dinner and stop hurting each other. The payment was the trigger, not the full injury. Returning it does not erase the other transactions. An apology offered as a price for restoring access is not accountability. Then what do you want from us? For years, that question would have pulled me back into negotiation. I would have designed tasks for everyone, reduced the consequence, and accepted gestures as transformation. I want nothing that can be forced in this room, I said. The company will follow its documents. My home will remain closed to anyone who pressures Ava or me. Any future relationship will depend on behavior after today. Dad stood. If you do this, you are no daughter of mine. The old fear rose automatically. Isolation, ingratitude, the loss of every shared holiday and family story. Then I remembered Ava asking whether I would see her as the cost. That is your decision, I said. He left without taking his copy of the review. Ryan followed, carrying his. Mom remained seated. I came to your door because the bakery declined my card, she said after a long silence. I know. I knew Ava's payment was being replaced, so I thought she was safe. You thought my ability to repair the harm removed your responsibility to care about it. She looked toward the closed conference room door. I don't know how to stand against both of them. Then learn. I cannot keep standing in front of all three of you. She left without asking me to reverse anything. There was no single morning when life became easy afterward. Luis accepted the interim operations position, and the promotion required more than changing his title. We documented schedules Ryan had carried in his head, reassigned vendor relationships, introduced dual approval for payments, separated related party spending from company accounts, and required written authorization for every benefit. Several deliveries were late. One client complained. No one lost a paycheck, and the company did not collapse. Luis refused an immediate permanent promotion. He asked for a 90-day interim period, written authority, and training on the financial controls Ryan had bypassed. His caution made me trust him more. We created cross-training requirements so no essential process would again belong to a single person's memory. Naomi added dual approval for unusual transfers and automatic alerts for changes to owner distributions. Reform distributed trust instead of concentrating it. Ryan challenged parts of the review through counsel. After an independent valuation and several weeks of negotiation, he accepted the redemption procedure and a formal restitution plan. Required corrections proceeded. He communicated with me only through attorneys and brief messages concerning family logistics. Dad remained a passive 10% owner. He stopped visiting the shop and did not call Ava. Mom and Dad adjusted their spending to their pensions and legitimate income. The change was uncomfortable, not catastrophic. Their discomfort no longer arrived in my account as an emergency. Ethan began saving for the used guitar. He visited Ava during recovery and helped her clean background noise from old recordings. Neither of them apologized again for what their parents had needed. 5 weeks after surgery, the packing came out. Ava gripped my hand while the audiologist tested tones at different frequencies. Her hearing was not perfect, and the highest tones remained difficult. The improvement was real. When we stepped outside, she stopped beneath a tree and listened to dry leaves moving above us. "They sound sharper," she said. I laughed and cried at the same time. Mom's first apology arrived in a letter. It did not mention Dad's temper, Ryan's panic, or my financial advantages. She wrote that she had come to demand access before asking about Ava, that she had repeatedly made my surrender the price of peace, and that losing the cards showed her how much she had begun treating as owed. I read the letter to Ava. We did not answer immediately. Mom began calling once a week and accepting it when I did not pick up. She stopped carrying messages for Ryan and Dad. When I finally spoke to her, she asked about Ava before discussing herself. None of that restored trust, but it created evidence that change might be more than another request. One rainy afternoon, several weeks later, Ava placed her recorder on the kitchen table. Water tapped the windows, rushed through the gutter, and whispered against the bare branches outside. She adjusted the volume and listened first with her right ear, then turned slightly so the repaired left ear faced the glass. A knock sounded at the front door, not pounding. One knock, followed by silence. Through the window beside the door, I saw Mom standing on the porch with both hands visible and no key in either one. We had collected the old spare key weeks earlier. She did not try the handle. She waited. I looked at Ava. "Do you want me to open it?" She listened to the rain for another moment. "Yes, but if she starts telling us what Dad wants, we ask her to leave." "We do." I walked to the door without hurrying. The recorder's red light remained on behind me, holding the sound of water, Ava's breathing, and my hand turning the lock. For most of my life, I had believed love was proven by how quickly I opened a door, covered a debt, solved a crisis, or swallowed an injury. I knew better now. Love could knock, love could wait, love could accept that entry belonged to the people inside. I opened the door because we chose to, and Mom remained on the threshold until I invited her in.